Electricity and Energy Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa has introduced the Independent Transmission Program, which allows the private sector investment in the country's transmission infrastructure. Eskom estimates it will cost 200 billion rand within the next 10 years to expand South Africa's electricity infrastructure. And for more on this, we are now joined by Tabi T from Granville Energy. He's the CEO, and he joins us now via our video link. Tabi, thank you so much for your time this evening. On that note, let's start off here. What are your thoughts on the latest bout of electricity outages which we experienced last night?
Well, thanks, Mbali, for this opportunity to engage with you in your audience. We're not surprised as industry. I mean, normally this time of the year, consumption load increases because of the cold weather. And the more cold front we get, the higher the load will be on the grid. You know, and I think the announcement that the minister made is obviously one in the right direction.
And coming to some of the solutions at hand, I mean, we always hear that, there should be some collaboration between the public and private partnerships in this country. And maybe just talking to us about those partnerships, how effective can they be to finding some of the solutions to our electricity supply?
Well, I will speak from the point of example and experience. Normally, wherever the private sector is involved, they bring a lot of innovation. We have the latitude and we have the capacity to innovate. And in the case of electricity, we can add a lot of value, when there's a private-public partnership. For instance, what we have done as Granville Energy, we looked at communities that would normally suffer during this winter period, and we design and build a microgrid as a proof of concept. That already would take off a lot of load from the grid, which will allow Eskom additional capacity. For instance, they made an announcement yesterday that they've reclaimed about 2 gigawatts of capacity. That is just the beginning. So when private sector is involved, we can actually help Eskom reduce the load on the grid, so they'll have capacity to service large power purchases.
And what other models can be explored aside from the one that you've just, just told us about in terms of trying to find alternatives to electricity supply?
I think we need to look at demand side and supply side. The focus has been a lot on demand side generation, but when we look at, on supply side, sorry, but when we look at on the demand side, we know that there's a lot of wastage. We haven't really gone as far as applying smart energy management methodologies on the side of residential and business users to help bring down the load. I think if we get the private sector involved, we can start developing technologies to help demand side management, and that can also help reduce load, especially during winter. If you drive around Johannesburg, around the major cities, you could see buildings with electricity on at night. Even though there are penalties from Eskom for leaving the lights on, it's just human behavior, right? So we can use technology, in that case, it's private sector, to help, including AI, to know when the load on the grid is high, and then apply certain decisions, software decisions, to help bring down unnecessary load on the grid.
And do we have the infrastructure for some of these, avenues we can look at in terms of trying to save electricity in the country?
Well, we do have, actually. If we talk about infrastructure, let's look at the amount of open residential rooftop we have around Gauteng alone, right? We can count about 1 million homes with open rooftop that can serve as free generation platforms. If you look at the number of schools around the township, if you go to Soweto Orange Farm, you can count within 2-kilometer radius about 20 schools. We can use those rooftops to generate electricity for the community. Yes, we do have the infrastructure, and the electricity can be generated exactly where it's needed, so we don't have to transmit it or carry it over the transmission network.
And coming back to issues around load shedding, many people during this time of the year are often skeptical that, we might experience load shedding. And coming back to what we experienced yesterday, what are your expectations when it comes to Eskom ensuring that the lights will be on for South Africans, as we head into the colder months?
Well, it would be hard for me to speak to Eskom's situation and how they'll manage the grid. However, if we look at the recent historical data, they've been good at managing the load. But what we should look at as well is how to encourage residential customers and small businesses to shift the load that they will normally use during peak period to renewable energy resources. For instance, municipalities and Eskom can encourage residential customers, even those who live in townhouses and estates, to invest in battery. So during off-peak period, they can store enough power in the battery, and during peak period, we don't have to put the load on Eskom. That can also turn out to be a huge cost savings for Eskom as far as peak power generation is concerned, which normally require Eskom using additional diesel generation plants.
All right, Tabi, thank you so much for your time.